snappy message. Okay, so we are recording and the attendees are coming in. Okay.
Do we have a quorum? I think we do. All right.
Hi, folks. My name is Mark Diller. I'm the District Manager of Community Board 2. The host of our tonight and chair of tonight's committee meeting is just temporarily delayed. He'll be right with us and was kind enough to text us from the subway to say so. So if you could just bear with us for a couple of moments, we'll be right with you.
Apologize for the delay. I'm really sorry. I had a subway delay, so sorry for making everyone wait 5 minutes.
That's okay. Well, no problem.
Let's go ahead and get started. So, hello everyone. For those who don't know us, we are the Community Board 2 Quality of Life Committee. I'm Committee Chair William Benish. We're also joined today by committee members Michael Levine, Susan Kent, Brian Pape, Zachary Roberts, Rocio Sands, and our public member Joanna Lawton. So thanks to the committee for joining, as well as CB2 Chair Janine Kiley. So thank you for attending today's meeting. Our committee deals with a number of issues, including street activities, as well as environmental and sanitation related issues, among other things. We've got a couple of those topics on the menu for tonight. We're going to start off with 3 different street activity applications, and then we're going to follow that up with a discussion, a continuing sort of discussion going off of other topics that we've discussed in the past as it relates to West Side resiliency. So without further ado, let's kick it off. We're going to go with the street activities in order as they are laid out on our agenda. So the first activity that we have is the Valentino Soho event from March 14th to March 16th. If you're an attendee and I call out your event, please raise your hand. We're going to ask to hear a short presentation from you just on the details of the event, followed by Q&A. So I believe all 3 have said that they will attend tonight. So if you're here from the Valentino Soho event, could you please raise your hand so we can elevate you? Okay. I'm going to promote you to panelist, Charity, if you could accept that. And if possible, to put your camera on as well, we would definitely appreciate that. If not, we understand. But oh, we're getting a no camera signal there. That's okay.
I think I fixed it. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for joining.
Of course, thanks for having me. My name is Charity. I am from the Valentino team. I am the event production communications assistant. Just a little bit more detail about the car itself. To note, this is not a branded or viral event. The car is simply just an extension of a temporary window installation that we're having. This will not be pushed out on Valentino social media or anything like that, so we do not expect crowds. The car will be there from the 14th to the 16th, starting around 7 to 8 a.m., lasting to 7 p.m. each day. Overnight, it will be parked in a nearby parking garage. During those 7 to 7 or 8 to 7 hours at our Soho location, the security will be on site and monitor the car. Also to note that there will be a photo opportunity March 14th for our production shoots. It will only be one photographer and no extensive like camera setup or anything like that. So we won't interfere with any street or sidewalk traffic. And then lastly, on March 16th, we will be hosting a invitation-only private reception. And again, the car will not be activated for guests. It is literally there for a piece of extension of, again, our window installation.
Okay, thanks, Charity. So, okay, so just so I understand, you're doing a couple of things kind of on the curb, but the car itself it's literally just a branded car sitting there. It's not, there's no really activity centered around it. Is that right?
Exactly. Most of the most movement we'll get is going to be inside of the store on the 16th. And that's for about 2 hours. And again, that's invitation only. But other than that, the car is literally sitting there, just, you know, being admired by whoever walks past it.
And in terms of the event that you're holding, the invitation only event, are you going to need any other parking space along the curb lane for that? Or you're just basically looking for one spot to park this car?
We're just looking for one spot in front of our Soho store. Okay. Most of the time, if we do host like any events around our Madison or Soho location, most of our guests will have like a driver or Uber there.
Okay, so you don't need any other spots for like production events or anything that relate to the party that you're throwing for production vehicles, I mean.
Yeah, not the time.
Okay, I mean, that seems very straightforward to me. I'm looking at the photo.
Anyone else have any questions for me?
Let me see if anyone on the committee has any questions. Michael?
Yes, will you be blocking off any portion of the sidewalk during any of this event with any kind of barrier that might cause a choke point for pedestrians, or will it remain completely open?
It will remain completely open. We won't have any like rope and stanchions, if that's what you mean.
Right.
Yeah, of course. No, nothing there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And will there be any amplified sound?
No.
Outside? No? Okay. Great. Any other questions from the committee or CB2? We do, it looks like, have one question from the public, so I'll move to that if we don't have anyone else. So Pete Davies, it looks like, has a question. Hi, Pete.
Hi, good evening, and thank you. I have a couple of questions for clarification. The hours you mentioned are for the event, or does that include setup time?
So the 7 a.m. and the 7 p.m., that is just the car being out there. We do have some of our Soho store members that get there early, mostly like our store managers or operations manager, along with the security guard. They'll be out there, but we'll just have someone come park the car and then leave, as long as we know that we do have an additional store member there to watch the car as well.
Wash the car, that would happen before 7 a.m.? Or watch or wash?
Watch, W-A-T-C-H.
Okay. What kind of car?
It's a vintage convertible. I'm not sure the make or model. We've had a couple of changes as far as like the car itself, but it's definitely a convertible. We had the approval with our team last week.
Okay, so that just raises the concern that the photo ops, the very attractive convertible on that narrow sidewalk, raises some concerns. Hopefully that will be taken care of. And the breakdown on the what, the 16th after the party Is there loadout of party goods? Is there loadout of furniture? Is there loadout of equipment from the store?
No, so for the event inside of the store, our VM team, they had that, I don't remember the exact day for installation, but they usually go very early in the morning and handle that. Excuse me, but for the event itself, we just utilize what we already have in the store. We have like some couches and seating area, and we have like a table from like the catering team. And then once the event is over, with the car, someone will either park it in the overnight garage, or the rental car owner will come and get it, and that'll be the end of the car.
Okay, and okie doke. Thanks.
No problem. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. I'm going to allow Darlene to ask a question.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Will. I appreciate it. My name is Darlene Lutz. I'm a resident in CB2. I'm also vice president of the First Precinct Community Council. So I do receive all the SAPO permits for Soho from the First Precinct. Valentino did not do a permit for their last event on Spring Street, which was in a convenience store in a landmarked building. They had a kiosk outside the convenience store, taking up a good portion of the sidewalk. That was an issue. I would like to be assured that you're going to follow what you state here, that the sidewalk will be free and clear. This area is getting so highly congested again, and it's a narrow sidewalk. So thank you.
Well, first off, I do apologize, Darlene. We did have a production agency, and so sorry that they didn't take the extra effort or the next step to get that cleared on our end. We thought everything was handled. But I can and will assure you that the only thing concerning the sidewalk will be nothing there. The car will be parked on the street, but it will not take up any walking space. As far as the security goes, the security is right outside of the door, and the windows are pretty big, so he can just stay there. He doesn't have to stand outside or anything like that. And we have a list, so I myself will be there as well as our PR team and our fence team. So making sure that people are going in for the 16th.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Again, sorry for that inconvenience.
Okay. Well, I don't see any more questions. So thank you, Charity, for the time. We appreciate you showing up to our meeting. And sorry for having to wait a little bit on me this time. So
no, you're fine. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Okay. Let's move to the next. So we have next the Armani Beauty pop-up on the Gansevoort Plaza. Jessica. Hello, Jessica. Thank you for joining.
Hi, how are you, William?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay.
Do you guys see me?
No, let me, you know what? I need to, I think, promote you to panelist. So if you can just accept, then we'll be able to see you. It should let you rejoin. I'll give it a try. There we go. Yeah, I sometimes forget if you just allow someone to talk on Zoom, it won't let them put your camera on. So
got it.
I don't know why they do that, but thank you.
No worries at all. So yes, I could also share a plan. I don't know if it was sent to you prior, but this is for Armani Beauty. They are.
I don't think I saw if there's a physical plan, yeah, that would be great. I don't think I saw it.
Like a mock-up. Okay, should I email it to you or should I share?
Sure. Yeah, you can email it to me and then you can keep talking. I might put it up while you're talking, but
Okay, great. What's your email?
it's just my name, william.benish@gmail.com.
Benish. Okay, great.
Thank you.
No problem.
But you can go ahead while I'm getting.
Should be in your inbox shortly. So this is an event. It's open for 3 days, April 27th, 28th, and 29th. It's open to the public. It will not be a ticketed event. It will be about a 30 by 30 space in Gansevoort Plaza, taking up less than 50% of the plaza, still room for the plaza's furniture for pedestrian to access throughout. We'll have full-time security, overnight security. The event hours are going to be 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. We will also need a lane permit for production vehicles and some furniture that the plaza will need to stack. That's kind of the gist. It's for some photo moments, just sampling of the products. There's no sales on site. Kind of a UGC content photo moment situation.
Great. Let me just pull this up. Thank you for sharing that. Give me a second here. I'm trying to remember from last year. Have you done pop-ups in the past on the Gansevoort Plaza?
Yeah, we have.
You did?
We recently did Prada there. That was back in November, October, September.
Okay, that's right. I think what did that one look like? I'm trying to remember.
That one was a pink bottle. It had Prada, kind of similar to this one actually. It said Prada in black on the top. It was a pink triangle that took up roughly the exact same amount of space as this one will.
Okay, let me go ahead and just share my screen.
Sure.
Just so people can see it. And while I'm doing that, is there any additional programming that's going to go on throughout the day, kind of in conjunction with this?
No, it's an open flow. We'll have staff kind of around the rope and stanchion, making sure only a certain amount of people are in at the time, so it doesn't cause too much congestion in there. But there's no true program. It's really just open for the public to view. It's not ticketed.
So it's sort of like people go in, and how do they interact with it? They take a selfie, or? Yeah,
you're actually able to go into this balloon structure. So there's a door in the back. You're able to take a picture. There's like a little teeny infinity room inside. So you go in, you take some photos. We're going to have staff on site as well to take pictures of people. And then you get a little mini sample of the perfume. Okay. And then you exit. There's going to be a back entrance where exit with the rope and stanchion. Don't join. And then that's where people will be exiting. So we'll have one exit and another entrance.
Got it. So, okay. So people just go in, they get the perfume bottle, nothing else is for sale or anything. No other programming, no celebrity guest or anything like that.
No.
Okay, cool. And any amplified sound or no?
There will be some music in the space. You won't really be able to hear it unless you're actually in the physical structure. But we're planning on having a couple speakers built in.
Okay, for the inside of the space.
Yeah.
And then can you mention, I can't remember if you mentioned it, sorry if you did, can you talk about the security a little bit?
No, of course. We're going to have 3 security guards during the day, and we're going to have 2 security guards overnight. The structure is, it's going to stay opened during not to the public, but we're not obviously breaking this down each night. So on all of the overnights, we'll have 2 security guards manning the structure. Any opening evening private events. We are going to have nothing to do with the actual structure. We're going to have a private event, but it's going to be inside of a venue elsewhere. We're still trying to figure out exactly where that's going to be, but nothing to do with the actual.
Nothing on site.
Yeah, so 8 p.m. After 8 p.m. every night, it's going to close to the public.
Great. And you said the structure itself is closed at night, but you're not closing off the rest of the plaza or anything like that, right?
Yeah, we're not closing off. We'll just have the security there overseeing the our actual structure to make sure there's no damage overnight.
Yeah. Yeah, for those who, you can see here, it looks like a good, it's about half the plaza, it seems. Maybe 60%, something like that. Okay, I think that was all my questions. Let me open it up. I'm gonna take this down for now. I can put it back up, but it's hard for me to see people. So how do I stop this chair? Okay, we can put it back up if anyone wants to look at it again. But Michael, go ahead.
Yes, did I hear you say that you would need a lane closure for equipment, or did I misunderstand you?
We will need a lane closure because I believe the Gansevoort sometimes likes to stack all the furniture. They need someplace to stack it, the furniture that won't be exposed outside with our structure there. So I think they require us to close down a sidewalk.
So you will be closing a sidewalk for the Gansevoort Plaza equipment, not yours.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're closing the sidewalk, or what area is being closed?
It's up to the plaza. I think in the past they've asked us to close off a sidewalk, a lane.
One lane in the plaza, not the sidewalk.
Correct.
I'm not really sure what that looks like.
I think it just depends on how much furniture they need to remove. I just don't think they have a physical space to store it. Oh yeah, Adam is also working with me and he could jump in on that. He may know more details if you could allow him access to talk.
Sure, you promote him. I mean, it seems this would be probably the same, whatever the plaza's done in the past. And I'm trying to remember now where they usually put the furniture for these things.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where the furniture goes, but Adam probably does because we've done this exact same.
Yeah, Adam, we've definitely heard from you.
Yes, so definitely not doing anything on any sidewalk. We're permitting what is Greenwich Street or 9th Avenue between Horatio and Gansevoort. So just the curb lane there. That's just, just for the Meatpacking Association to break down some of the tables and chairs. They actually like to put them in the curb lane there.
Yeah. So they usually do this for other plaza events. That's where they usually put them. Okay.
Yep, they did that for when we did the Prada event there, and that's typical for them now.
Thanks, Adam.
The good thing though is that we probably this time won't need a generator. We're not sure, but we don't think so because there's recently been a power box installed for Gansevoort Plaza in the past 6 months or so. So Kevin at Meatpacking is getting back to me soon about how much power they are able to give us. So we might not have to bring in any additional power.
Interesting. Okay. And then could you just touch on the setup and breakdown?
Yes.
It says setup starts on the 27th.
Right. So we have a load in and a load out day. So it's the 27th is the load in day. That's the day it's going to be built on the 27th. And then it's open to the public the 28th, the 29th, and the 30th. And then we have a breakdown day on May 1st where everything gets broken down. So it's only open to the public 3 days, and there's a build day at the front and a strike day at the end. And we won't start anything until 6 a.m. on the 27th, and we'll be off the plaza by 11:59 p.m., probably earlier, on May 1st. And I'll have a site manager from my team there to make sure everything goes well.
Yeah.
How is our hours of Armani setup and break? So at 6 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. will be the setup and the breakdown. And then the event times are roughly, or they are 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. on the activation days.
Yeah, Adam, it does feel early for a 6 a.m. feels pretty early. I don't think we've seen that early of a start that often.
Yeah, 6 a.m. is typical. They actually don't want anything before 6 a.m., but it's not anything loud at 6 a.m. There's no power tools or, you know, beeping forklifts or anything like that. It's minimal noise until about 8 or 9 o'clock, but they do give us the plaza as of 6 a.m. Okay. Same with Flatiron. Flatiron Plaza has the same kind of rules because there are residents around that plaza, and we know that there are residents around Gansevoort Plaza also. So we keep the noise very minimal for the first few hours.
Okay. When you said you think you can get it done earlier than 11:59, do you have an estimate for?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, go ahead. It's a pretty extensive build. I mean, it's, you know, as you can see, it's an actual structure. We're actually building like a pop-up store with wall flats and such. And, you know, we have the appropriate Department of Buildings permit filed. Since the balloon is over 10 feet, it's all weighted down. It's stamped by an engineer and all that kind of jazz. But it's not just a basic setup. It's a little bit of an elaborate build. So it's going to take at least, you know, 12 to 14 hours.
The breakdown on May 1st will certainly take less time. I would venture to say we're going to be out no later than 4 p.m. on May 1st. It's all pre-done trussing, so taking it apart is much easier.
Right. A lot of the builds, like, it takes a lot longer to build it than it does to take it down. The takedown is always about half the time as the build. So the build, I would say 12 or 13 hours, the takedown probably half that.
Does Armani have a retail presence in meatpacking? I am not sure. I don't think they have a standalone building or like a brick and mortar storefront in meatpacking. But I am assuming some of their products are sold in some of the stores in Gansevoort.
But they have a corporate office there or no? They do, right? No?
They do.
They do.
Not in meatpacking. They're in Hudson Yards.
In Hudson Yards. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Please raise your hand. Okay. Thank you for your time, Jessica and Adam.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Last but not least, we have the Micromobility Festival, West 4th between Greene and Washington. We have Cecil and Stephanie. Okay. Okay, I've promoted both of you to panelists.
Thank you
Hi,
so
Cecil.
much for having us. Hi there.
Hi,
Interesting to...
Thank you for joining.
Yes, well,
Much
I come
appreciated.
from very far away. I live over in CB3, so practically different universe. So, I am chief sustainability officer at NYU, and we're trying something new this year, which we're calling 2040 Now. And it's based around the fact that NYU's climate neutral goal year is 2040. And we're going to take the week leading up to Earth Day in April to do a bunch of things to get students excited about climate change activities, right? All our students know about climate change. They're also terrified of it. And when they hear about it, they run the other way as fast as they can, and they don't want to think about it. So the goal is to have a week of activities to say, hey, actually, if humans work together, we can actually make a difference. We can do things that make our lives better and save carbon and are good for our cities and all these things. So we're doing things around food. We're doing things around contacting your government officials. We're going to have a sustainable fashion show, all this great stuff. And one of the days, obviously, is focused on transit, because that's a huge part of the carbon equation. And so that's how we picture the Micromobility Fest, is to sort of raise awareness of students, things they can take with them after they leave NYU, other ways to get around. This event will be open to the public, I should say. It's not just for students, for anyone on the street. And I will turn it over to my colleague Stephanie to say more about the details.
Thanks, Cecil, and hi, everyone. So I'm Stephanie Margolis. I'm a manager at NYU's Office of Sustainability. So as Cecil mentioned, we are hosting Micromobility Street Festival for community members to be able to explore alternative modes of transportation and learn more about how personal transportation choices can help combat climate change. So the event that we're proposing will be held on April 18th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Setup will start at 10 a.m. Breakdown, we will need 2 hours for that. So that will go until 7 p.m. We'll be offering a variety of programming, which will include bike riding lessons, helmet giveaways, ideally in coordination with local council members, bike repairs for students and NYU and community members at large to bring bikes and get their bikes repaired. We'll have tabling for community organizations to describe what they do to advance transportation. So this will include everything from local advocacy organizations to organizations that are focused on increasing access to biking for a wide variety of users. You know, we're really focused on adaptive cycling as well. So we'll have community tabling. We will also have demos of different forms of micromobility. So you'll be able to demo an e-bike. You'll also be able to demo putting on essentially a battery that can convert your manual bike into an e-bike. We'll also have some giveaways to the public, including annual city bike memberships, as well as bad weather gear for cyclists. As Cecil mentioned, this is free to the public. We will have full-time security. We are working with NYU's campus safety to understand the full level of security that we will need. We will have some music, but the noise will really be very low, and we will also secure a sound permit. We are working with an event management consulting company on this as well to ensure that this continues to move forward pretty seamlessly. And this is the first time that we are hosting the event. We don't anticipate there to be an incredible amount of participants, but we're really looking forward to making the impact that we're hoping to make.
Yeah, so I see we got a question. Oh, sorry, you're the chair.
Yeah, well, I was gonna start by asking, you know, I think one really interesting topic that's sort of a topic du jour is the safety of these batteries. So I'm wondering if you're going to have anything talking about battery safety, fire risk, what the right types of batteries people should be using so that we're minimizing that risk, where they should be stored. I don't personally know I don't know enough to know you know, what the answers are, but I'm sure there's some interesting info and useful info out there.
Yeah, it's obviously a huge deal right now in the city. My building just outlawed e-bikes in the building. So you could tell people are thinking about it. You know, when I talk to NYU students and say who rode their bike, who rode their own bike to campus today, very few hands. When I say who has used City Bike, like I'd say 3/4 or more of the hands go up. It's like City Bike is very popular because of what you're saying. Like where are you going to store your bike in most apartments that students can live in, and other people for that matter. In any case, yes, safety is part of it, right? If we're trying to give students and others life lessons that are go on, you need like a UL listed battery that has been checked and, you know, approved by a certified rating agency before you bring it inside. Here are safe things for charging. That's definitely part of it.
And to just follow up there, we will have organizations that do focus on that, and that will be very big in terms of the messaging that we try to get all of the community organizers to spread the word on.
Okay, great. So you will have some info about battery safety. And then I'm sorry, I know you said it, but I was trying to take notes quickly. Can you just repeat the hours one more time?
It'll be from 1 to 5 p.m. on Tuesday, April 18th. Setup will start at 10 a.m. and we'll need 2 hours for breakdown. So setup 10 a.m., breakdown 7 p.m. with the event from 1 to 5.
And it's West 4th between Washington Square East. Sorry, what block is it specifically?
So it's West 4th between Washington Square East and Greene Street. Washington Square East also sometimes goes by University Place.
Yes, I see it. I see it. Okay, so it's really sort of just a half, well, it's one of those long blocks, but it's, okay, divided in half by Greene there. Okay. And are you giving out any food or drink or no?
Most likely no.
And we said amplified sound, yes, but you're going to try to keep it low. Okay. Do we have anyone from the board that has any questions? Yes, Michael.
Is the target audience the public or the students at NYU or both?
It is both.
So my question to you is, why is it such a short period of time? Wouldn't you want more time to reach more students?
As Cecil mentioned, this is part of a larger event, and we have over 40 events that we are planning for the week. And so this was the capacity that we felt that we could move forward with for this year. But depending on the success, this could be something that we look to do, annually or on a more frequent basis moving forward.
Okay, good. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's interesting feedback. We'll definitely think about that.
Okay. Who else? Any other questions? We have one question in the chat. Well, actually, Pete has his hand up. Let me promote it. Hey, Pete.
Great, thank you. So I'm not clear. Is this a street closure or is this a partial thing? And will you be using the Plaza outside Stern Business for any of the event, which is right next to this stretch of West 4th?
So this would be a street closure. We do not plan on using the sidewalks, solely the street itself. And we do plan on using Schwartz Plaza, which is immediately to the left of Stern Business School. And there is also a chance that we will be using Gould Plaza, which is the plaza outside of Stern Business, as you mentioned.
Schwartz Plaza, is that the through plaza that goes to West 3rd?
Correct.
Great, thank you.
And is that part of the application, or are those not subject to, are those considered like private, like POPs or something, or is that part of the application too?
So they're
street closure here.
They're not part of the application because they're owned by NYU.
Yeah. Okay. So like a POPs or something.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it looks like we have from Darlene as well a question / suggestion if you could include some rules about some stuff about the rules of the road.
Yes, so that will certainly be part of the programming as well as and the education that we're hoping that the community organizations push out. In addition, something that we're also really focused on is appropriate accessibility and the need to ensure that the need to ensure that the sidewalk is available and used for pedestrians, and that if e-bikes or e-scooters or e-skateboards are ever positioned on the sidewalk, that it has negative implications for those who have limited mobility and may, e-bikes may present a barrier to them. So providing information on the rules of the road and appropriate docking and storage and how to use your bike and your form of micromobility will certainly be part of this programming.
I think that kind of education is really great, and I'm glad that you're doing it. Really useful and helping people understand kind of not just what the rules are, but maybe why some of these rules are there as well, and how it can negatively impact other people. So I think that's a great thing to include. Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay. Well, it's nice to meet you both virtually. I think I will definitely plan on stopping by this. Well,
all right.
I'll have to duck out of work, I guess. But maybe I can make that happen. Okay. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Bye, everyone.
Okay. All right. So we can go into business section in a second. I think before I went into business session, I wanted to at least open it up for the public, if anyone from the public wanted to comment on our last agenda item, which is a discussion regarding a call that the Hudson River Park Trust Authority has made for a task force to address sort of the range of issues that we've been discussing on the west side, which include but are not limited to resiliency issues. Let me first just share this. This is a public letter. Let me, you can find it linked on a couple of places. It was on the Village Sun and a few others, but let me just put it up. It's a very brief letter that was put out by the council. So let me just put it up on the screen so we all see it. 1 second. All right. Let me share my screen here. So this came out back in February. It's super brief. That's basically the entire letter. One of the problems that we've sort of come back to as a committee and as a board, I think, as we've discussed resiliency and what the West Side looks like, is you have this amalgam of agencies. You have state DOT, which is responsible for the West Side Highway and the bike lane. You have all of these all this different infrastructure underneath the West Side Highway. You have Con Ed under there. You have sewage lines. You have the CSOs that are sort of outflows for sewage at various parts of the park. You obviously have the Hudson River Park Trust involved. So I think sort of part of the impetus behind this letter was there's all these things going on the West Side. There's all these issues that people have talked about and need to be addressed, whether it's the CSOs, whether it's transit on the West Side, and some, there's what the impact of congestion pricing is. You have various public officials that have looked at expanding the bike lane and what that would look like. So you have what I've seen is you have these different issues and people sort of all talking about them separately, but nobody's really trying to take a holistic approach as to sort of envisioning the future of what the West Side looks like. And then on top of that, now, of course, you've got the Army Corps, which has come in and has sort of presented its proposal, which I think everyone has, seen, and which we commented on, and contains sort of the proposal for an actual wall. And so what I think the trust was trying to do with this is just sort of get out there that there needs to be a more holistic approach to this. So they put out this very short letter last week, basically saying we need to bring together all of the relevant parties and sort of start envisioning this long term and think about how each of these different components impacts the others, and how each of these different agencies and constituencies need to work together. So that was kind of long-winded, but I think that's the basis behind this. I'm just curious if anyone has any thoughts on this overall. I know it's pretty broad. One of the things we can maybe think about is you know, if there is going to be sort of a task force put together or a working group, who should be a part of that, and we can probably make a recommendation for that. And also what we think, if we have any thoughts on what we think the scope should be as well. I think we should feel free to, as a board, kind of think about this and opine in any way we want. And then maybe we decide if we want, you know, a very short reso essentially endorsing this letter and this idea. So let me, I can't see anyone when I have this up. So let me unshare this. It's available online and I sent it around to the committee as well, if people want to look at it. Michael.
Yes, my understanding of the letter is that it was written by the advisory council, not HRPT.
No, it is the advisory council. Yeah.
So the advisory council is the large group, and HRPT would be one of the players. Correct?
Presumably, yes. Yes. Presumably they would be part of the task force. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make that clear that it came from the advisory council, which has representation of many different organizations.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Carter, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, you know, there was a task force convened right at the beginning of COVID that had about, I don't know, 30, 35 participants. We were actually, was one of the last meetings that was canceled after everything else was canceled. It took that long to cancel it, which is why it really sticks out in my mind. But it had 4 representatives from each community board on there, as well as all the state officials, as well as elected officials. It's a very broad, diverse group. That was originally to talk about Pier 40 and the spaces to the north and the piers up there, and sort of the was really diving into some of the larger issues that, you know, as everybody knows, some different things happened. Some of the governor jumped ahead and took action on, is it Pier 76? I'm forgetting which pier, opened it up to the public. So the dynamic has changed, but that format worked very well. As difficult as it is to get things done in that large of a group, it's really the only way that you can have enough people with the depth of knowledge brought from all the different places so that there is enough room. So that's what I would advocate for. And, you know, and obviously this is a very difficult subject, because with the advisory council bringing this up, their interest is the park. And that's not necessarily the only interest here. And, you know, and as I had sent to you guys, you know, that one rendering that's in the early on is very disturbing.
Yeah. And we put that in our comments and our reso and everything.
That's right. Yeah. And the challenge is that even, you know, having an earthen berm, all these other things that, you know, the biggest thing is there needs to be a design competition. There needs to be funding for that. People need to bring in some new ideas going forward. This has clearly been addressed all over the world in many different formats. But this particular area that we're concerned with has such a high level of use with very limited space. You know, having sections addressed slightly differently that won't have the resulting impact, I think, is really important. And as we, you know, I pointed out, and other people know, it's the underneath the ground, which is where all the work is, not what you see on top.
Yep.
And so even an earthen berm would most likely be covering some other infrastructure to hold the Hudson River back. Yep. So, you know, that's the challenge. Where is it? And then, you know, for my own work down at Ground Zero, the importance of the emergency artery, if there's any type of major disaster, is something we don't think about. But when you see that type of thing and how important initially the road was, you start to understand their divergent interests. But you know, I'll just go back and say that the other thing is there needs to be a study. What all is there, right? Everybody knows all the different things that you can talk off the top of your head, but the actual details on the challenges is still not known along the west side of what's underground. And that's really some stepping stones. And all this requires funding, which is why a task force is such a good idea, because it brings together, in particular, the state, which has a lot of bond act, has some of the, I don't know if the bond act money is all allocated, but other opportunities to fund over a long term. But if it's
still
not
a couple $100 million
now,
that's unallocated, I think.
Yeah, but if it's not addressed now, it's too far. It's far enough ahead that you can plan, but as you get closer without any ideas, it's very difficult to address. And I think that the speed of the east side is something that was a surprise to many people, how fast that moved, but it would be great to really have an exploration of some of the other uses. And Hudson River Park, as Tom so eloquently laid out, is really a jewel. And taking the time now to brainstorm and funding that is a really important idea. And that's where the task force can come together to really make that happen. And I know Johanna's aware of some of the past work on those types of efforts to just bring together ideas and envisioning. And they're the only one, that's the only model that could really, I think, bring some of this forward. So I'll leave it at that. I'm sure other people have things to say as well.
No, I mean, as you brought up before, and as this committee's discussed, you can't look at each of these issues in a vacuum. You can't look at just protecting the coast from a storm surge while ignoring drainage issues, right? And in fact, the proposal as it stands would require additional pumping capacity to be put in east of the wall in order to pump water back out, because it would impact the drainage of rainfall coming in, which presumably also happens during a storm, in addition to the actual kinetic storm surge. And so, as I've always kind of been saying, I think I don't know exactly what the final design looks like, but whatever is incorporating the maximum amount of green resiliency structures or strategies, to me is better than putting up a wall. Janine? I think you're muted. Janine.
Yeah, I am. I just wanted to note that, I like the task force idea that's parallel, like what we did with the open space on all the community boards. I think it needs a couple thoughts. The task force needs to have some teeth. Can't just be overruled at the last minute if there's a different plan. It needs to have some resiliency experts. They may be community board people, they may not be. And I just think of what I love about Hudson River Park. There's a lot of things I love, but one of the things I love is just the view at the water level of the water. And a wall would basically privatize that view and basically create a view that you can only take in if you own a property adjacent to the waterfront and on a high enough floor to look over the wall. And that is not what a park is meant to be. And that's sort of very important for me in terms of, yes, there might be open space, but if there's a wall around it, it's not taking advantage of the beautiful location. So I just want to somehow get that in there. Thanks.
Joanna?
Yeah, I don't know if this was in the article, but I'm just wondering if anyone knows who specifically is being asked to lead this task force. And I think that's a really important decision that'll be made, because we've seen ones that have been very successful with good leadership and someone who really brings the task force together and pushes it in the direction that the community wants, and then others that we've seen that just meet every week and discuss the same issues in a little bit of a vacuum. So if there is a way to identify like who in the city or in the state would be the best champion for the community or work most collaboratively, it's definitely worth starting to brainstorm if we can add some specificity there.
I think that's a good point. I did not see a proposal for who should lead it. So I don't know if we have we as a community board have a thought. I don't know if you would have a single leader. It would be sort of a various group, but I guess you're asking who's really driving it and kind of keeping people on task. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, that, or if it is a specific agency even that is the driving, doesn't have to necessarily be a specific individual.
Right. And as far as representation, I mean, I would think that we should have community board representation, right? We should at least ask for it.
Can we go one step further and ask that the community boards co-chair leadership of the task force, and each one choose who, like each one would have 4 opportunities, all the different community boards, to choose who should serve on the task force. But I think we're looking for joint leadership by all of the community boards.
Right. I mean, recognizing, you know, not every community board is going to have experts, but on various issues, but you get enough people who have knowledge about different areas, and that's kind of the goal. Right. And you also want to make sure that you have people who are really working to represent, you know, their neighborhood's interest.
And whatever the solution is, you want to make sure you have buy-in from all of the community.
Exactly. Carter, did you want to add into that?
Yeah, you know, it's not necessary that the expertise come from the task force members. The importance here is that ultimately this is a political decision, and it's not always practical, but the involvement of the community is critical for that buy-in. And so that's why having a breadth of people to bring in different things, this is not a choice of, oh, this is the obvious answer. The most important thing is to explore at this stage so that it can be accomplished whenever that time frame is set out. It's not going to make people happy, you know, whatever the outcome is, because to stop water is stopping water, and it requires, as far as I know, something physically in the way, and that's unfortunate, but that's, you know, doing something to explore all the options is far enough in advance. Even just getting people who may not chime in through some other opportunities to pitch in is really important, and it helps us all get to a good conclusion in the end. I think that the East Side was not a good conclusion because it doesn't feel like people were brought along together in that process, which is why, despite it being addressed, there's so much unhappiness from certain segments of the community. And I think that this is early enough that we can do that, which is why experts can all bring their opinions to this, but the participation of the community is important. And we're not expected to be experts. We're expected to weigh in, just like with what Janine was saying of what's important, right? You know, how that's accomplished, you know, whatever which way that is. But, you know, we don't want to rule out anything now. That the idea is to open it up so it's not one of those tools in the toolkit that the Army Corps has, which everybody seemed to be dissatisfied with most of those except for the flip-up barriers. And those seem like a very, very expensive proposition. And, you know, but there may be other ways to do it. And that's what's important to explore. But I just, instead of putting experts, you know, the job is to weigh the options. And in the end, the decision is not what the experts say. Unfortunately, that's not the way these decisions are made. And I think we just need to keep sight of that. And that's where the community participation is really important in that. So thanks.
Yep. Susan?
What we have as various community boards do bring in expertise. It is an understanding of the environment on the way it's actually being lived in, that none of these, you know, the experts, it's like the expertise only takes you so far. It needs to be complemented with an understanding of what's going on in these communities, how people are using their spaces, what are people expecting, what can they live with, what they might find excessive. And it's, you know, if we're not a part of this, then you can't get as good a result. It's just not going to be possible. Not to mention, you know, the idea that people feel like it's more than just being left out of the process. I think it's an essential element that simply won't be taken into account if there isn't the perspective that, you know, only we as residents can provide.
I agree. Okay, Pete Davies, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, yesterday, a really good article was published in the Village Sun. I'm going to put the link in the chat. It's from Tom Fox, who is a member of the advisory council at Hudson River Park. And
that's right. Yep. I think he was the driving force behind this letter as well, Pete.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's a very comprehensive look at what might be needed. Not an answer to what is needed, but an opening appeal for looking at it in a much broader way, including federal, state, and city controlled areas. So that's all done holistically. So I would just say if everybody in their own time can take a look at that, it would be good for the discussion.
And I will say, Pete, I sent this exact article to my committee yesterday, so hopefully people have read it.
Okay, thanks a lot. And
thank you.
This is definitely going to be a disruptive situation. So how we bring the community along is going to be a job in itself.
Thank you, Pete. Darlene? Do you want to comment?
Yes, thank you again for allowing me to comment. I just wanted to note that on the letter from the Hudson River advisory panel that has Dan Miller, Terry Meltzer, and a third person I can't remember. It was not sent to Senator Brian Kavanaugh. He's not on the list of recipients. I think that should be noted since, you know, he basically has waterfront, all the waterfront in his district south of Canal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we can debate, are there any more public questions from the public? If not, I think we should go into our business session, and then let's go through the various topics, and then we'll come back to this and talk about the actual resolution, but I want to do this in the right order. So okay, so let's move into business session now. Let's go back to the street activities first, and then we can talk about what the actual resolution looks like on this letter. So let's go back to the Valentino event. To me, it's just a single parking spot, and there's almost no programming. I know it's a busy street, but it seems pretty minimally invasive. I honestly, I didn't realize before that that's all it was. I thought there was going to be programming around it. So does anyone have any thoughts on this one?
I think it's fine. I would vote in favor of it.
Yeah. Is anyone opposed to approving this one? Okay, let's vote. All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Recusal? Okay. Okay, Armani Beauty pop-up. We're back. We got a few months of a break from the Plaza events, but we're back again. To me, I have, the same issue I have with every event. It's not that we've had as a committee have had with every event on the Plaza like this. It's not necessarily specific to individual operators, but it's more that it's basically just becoming a billboard on the Plaza, which is basically what it is. So compared to some of the other events we've seen there, it's not as bad, I guess. It doesn't take up the whole Plaza. The Plaza is not closed. It's taking up half the Plaza. There's not a ton of extra programming other than people just going in and out. And it's basically a billboard on the Plaza, right? And so I don't know. We could continue to just sort of make the point in the past that as a rule, we are opposed to the Plaza being used essentially as free advertising. Well, not free, but essentially as advertising in public space. We can comment that we're happy that they're keeping half the Plaza open. And, if such events are approved, we want to continue pushing for as much public space as possible to be preserved. I don't know. What do people want to say? I would maybe just say something like that and keep it in line with our previous resos on this topic. Yes, Susan?
You mentioned something about, trying to keep as much of the Plaza open. It would really be helpful if there were some sort of standard, at least so that no one in the future could take over the whole Plaza. So that even if we are going to have to live with these, and we should assume that we will, is that there is some sort of threshold so that it's never, the Plaza is never taken away from the public in its entirety at any point in time.
I mean, we could use this as an example and just basically say, this is about 50%, and we think this is sort of the max size, nothing larger than this.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, it as a maximum, and ideally less, but, talking about the idea that the rest not only has to remain open and there has to be flow and there has to be, but I think that you have to be realistic that this is part of our life.
I think no more than 50% is perhaps a reasonable level. Again, saying if we're not gonna be able to prevent this, then.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't see how we really are, but if we take a more nuanced approach and say, okay, we may have to live with this, but that doesn't mean that the community should be shut out of its own space, then maybe we've got something that people can, coexist with.
Yeah. I think maybe the resolution could be something like, we remain opposed in general to this use of public space. However, should such events continue to be approved, we do appreciate that it's only taking up 50% of the Plaza. We think no event should in the future should take up more than this. We think the Plaza should remain open to the public at all times. Those kind of points.
And also they did mention they would need a curb lane closure to store the equipment. And I think we need to have a limit on that.
Well, I think that's been going on. Other people just haven't really told us about that. I think that's just meatpacking, finding a place for their own chairs and tables, right?
So does the meatpacking should come to us and ask us for that one space or the spots, whatever, for their furniture?
They haven't done that before. I don't know.
Right.
Perhaps we should mention that.
Okay. So what we want to say that we should be consulted in the future for curb lane closures as it relates to storage.
Exactly.
Brian, did you have a point you wanted to make?
Yes, I thought we should also, as I recall, we wanted to see some education, not only free to the public, which I think this one is, but also have some educational element to it, something beneficial to the public, and besides the promotional efforts on a particular product. So I think that was one of the points that we wanted to use in our criteria for approving these kinds of activities.
Yeah, we wanted educational and we wanted stuff with direct ties to the neighborhood, which doesn't really seem to be the case in either of these. So we can note that. Let me put Donna as a panelist. She has her hand up.
I guess that's also the distinction between an event, you know, that we would actively support because it had a cultural element, an educational element, versus one that we're sort of tolerating because, you know, and saying, let's try to keep it from becoming overwhelming.
Right.
Whereas if it had a quality such as what Brian mentioned, then it's like, oh no, this is an asset. So yes, we still care about the idea of it not taking over more than a certain percentage, but it, you know, those ideas of controlling how much space is taken over only become more important when there's not that aspect that's, you know, a benefit to the community.
Right. Okay. Donna?
Yeah, I just want to point out too with this that while it's taking up 50 to 60% of the plaza, it's taking up the westernmost side of the plaza, which is the heavily trafficked side. It gets everybody going east and west on Gansevoort and Little West 12th come in on that end. And then also people coming north on Greenwich going further into meatpacking. So it does get congested down at that end. It would be better if they pushed it further east, not what they want to do because it's narrower, but for the flow of traffic, that's a better positioning than having it where they're putting these. It makes it congested on that western edge. And also just to reiterate your point about, you know, this one group has no presence in meatpacking. So it is really, it's not only a billboard, but it's a billboard for somebody that isn't even in the district.
Right. Okay. So is the resolution, we don't recommend this event, but with all these other points? Are people?
I think so. I mean, unless people are, if you're going to, unless you're going to, I mean, I don't see anybody wanting to support this. At the same time, we may be have more of a, you know, impact if we discuss the things, you know, the ways to mitigate impact.
Yeah, I think I see it with a multiple therefores, basically, where we're not recommending approval, but we have these extra recommendations, which are what we just discussed.
I think we have to say we're not recommending approval for the following reasons. We need to make that very clear in the whereases.
Sure. I will do that.
That's good. Will, also, I don't think it really matters on the paperwork, the dates were correct, but in the agenda, we have an August date, and I think that was just
a typo. Yeah. Okay, we'll correct that. Yeah, thank you. Okay, anyone disagree with this approach? Let me know. Okay, let's take a vote. All in favor of the resolution we just discussed, a not approval for these reasons with these recommendations, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain or recuse? No. Okay. Okay. The Micromobility Festival. I think it's a nice idea. It's definitely a somewhat unique event, I would say. It does seem like it has a nice educational aspect. I'm not sure how many people are going to go on, you know, Tuesday during the middle of the day. I may not be able to make it.
I have to say, you're right. It really does reduce its impact by holding it, you know, in the middle of a work school day.
Yeah.
Also, this location is not very well traveled.
Yeah, so like in terms of traffic impact and overall impact on the block, it's actually pretty minimal. But maybe it would be, this was one that actually would be nice if a few more people saw it. But overall, I don't really have an issue with this one.
I think the fact that they're having many other events coordinating with this one, I think is fine, that it is where it is. And I'm sure the NYU kids will be walking around and might learn something from it. I think it's fine, though. I would vote in favor of this one.
Yeah. Yeah, we always talk about how, you know, street festivals, it would be nice to get a little more variety, and a lot of them are the same now with just the same vendors and everything. So at least this one has an educational aspect and it's a little bit different.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyone opposed to that view? Anyone else want to say anything? Okay, let's take a vote. All in favor of approval of this event, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain, recuse?
I'm gonna abstain from voting just because NYU is my employer, but don't have any other comments.
Okay. Is that a recuse maybe then?
Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
I'm recusing myself.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so thanks everybody. Let's go back. Let's now go back to this task force topic. So I was taking a lot of notes as everyone was talking before. It seems to me like most people support the idea. I mean, again, it does seem like it's necessary to get everybody in under one tent. I don't think anyone is satisfied with kind of what the Army Corps has put out for now. So I don't see any reason not to support this. I guess the question is, what else do we want to bake into the resolution in terms of what we recommend? I think definitely community board involvement. Are there any other groups that we want to recommend that are a part of this? Do we want to get into the details of specifically what it should cover? I mean, so far what HRPT or HRPAC put out, again, is pretty vague. So I think we can sort of get into as much or little detail as we want in our resolution. Yeah, Carter?
So I just went and pulled up the original email about the other working group, and the composition. It says the trust, working with the state and city, is creating a task force comprised of 4 members each from community boards 2 and 4, 2 members each from community board 1 and the advisory council, 1 member from the Hudson River Park Friends, and local elected officials representing the park area. And then it goes on to say that the trust was hosting this, you know, leading this, but they said that they would retain professional planning support, and, you know, in this case was including a landscape designer and land use consultants to help everybody talk about the open space and land use planning. So, you know, that similar model is the way in which you can bring in as needed whenever a task force is decided as their purview, can bring in all the necessary people. And, you know, unfortunately, most of those are professionals that would need to be retained professionally through some sort of contract. So you wouldn't necessarily have them as members of the task force, but it brings in the expertise, and the participants, you know, from the governor and the mayor, they can decide whomever it is representing all of their agencies would need to participate again on the purview. So I don't know if it needs to go into super detail. There's some, clearly the trust is not outlined in this particular case, since they were the meeting host and had their staffers participating, but that was the model for that. But this area is state, mostly state owned, with the city overlay but a lot of it is the budgeting, right, of however this project would get done. So those are the two key groups who have the resources that they could put together to properly convene and run a larger group. And many others can be invited to participate, but not necessarily, you know, as you move around the different issues, because there's so many issues. But that's the consistent, you know, groups are the boards, the elected officials, Hudson River Park. Yeah. And those are the key players. And, you know, as things move along, it will change. The most important is to bring everybody together. And, you know, make no mistake too, that in the end, you know, there's also political jockeying for all kinds of things in this. So the broader the group, the better, so that all the issues are raised. And that's really what's, and the reason that it was only 2 from Community Board 1 is because they were looking at the length of the park in that particular case, and CB1 has a much smaller portion below Canal. It's probably also why Senator Kavanaugh was not included on that list, because people forgot that task force was just Pier 40 and Pier 76, which I don't know now with the redistricting of Pier 40 is still in Brad's district or in Brian's district, but that was probably why he was inadvertently left off. But that's why the composition was such that it was.
Brian's district now.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So that's a very important player, because obviously, you know, the occupied spaces on the piers are very important, how those are treated. But that was the layout of the group and the funding for it and the professional management. You know, clearly the boards don't have the resources to do any of that. And it's a challenge because this is the city has stuff that crosses underneath it, you know, things that lead into it and is impacted. But, you know, this has always been an open question with respect to maintenance in the park, you know, how that's funded, the seawalls, who's responsible for that, where that money comes from. Obviously, of the CSOs, whose are those underneath?
Yeah.
You know, what happens if one caves in and there's a lot of overlaying works? There's so many different things. We're building a catch basin, you know, and pump station might be a city project if that were further in, you know, let's say on one of the side streets. You know, but the city state are really the two key, with proper representation from the community and enough depth, because we are not paid for the community representatives. And that's why you need a larger members. This is probably going to be an ongoing dialogue with term limits. This may even stretch way past, you know, who's on there. So having, you know, a lot of board members is important. I'll leave it at that, but that's.
Yeah. The funding to me is an interesting question, Carter, because I imagine this task force, as you have put out, one of the first tasks they might undertake is to have a comprehensive study of what exactly are the existing conditions. And I think that's as good a place as any to start. And so it's kind of, you form this task force and then immediately you need to get money from somewhere, whether it's the city or state or whoever. So I wonder what the best way to address that is maybe when you put the task force together, you have to think about where the funding is going to come from or where you're going to ask for funding from. What do you think?
Yeah. And I just wanted to add something, which is very important. I have not heard a whole lot, and that may be my own ignorance, from the trust itself on the issue and how they might like to proceed. The advisory council is not the trust, and clearly the trust is perhaps most impacted as an entity by these decisions, because they comprise the entire waterfront. You know, everybody else is a portion, but the trust is an interesting player, and it'd be interesting to hear from them. Even in, you know, it's hard to operate in a vacuum without them. Maybe others have heard from them if they support this position that the advisory council has taken, but their entire being is impacted by this, but they are also comprised of the primary stakeholders in it. So it's, but the appointment, and just so everybody knows that I believe that the head of the Hudson River Park rotates every couple of years between the city and the state. And Commissioner Sagos, I think, is the chair now, and then it would go back to the city whenever that is and goes back and forth. So just to give people an idea of that intertwined partnership.
Interesting. Yeah. Michael?
I would just, I agree with what Carter is saying. I would just like to reiterate my point of view that because there are so many moving parts, our resolution should say that the task force is co-chaired by the 3 community boards involved. And then that way, other communities are represented, no matter who is doing what on the park, no matter who is hired to do any expert work. The 3 community boards should be running the show because we are the ones who are most impacted, and we are the ones who must convince our communities that whatever the solution would be is good for everyone. So I would like to see our resolution say, we recommend that the task force be co-chaired by the 3 community boards.
Carter?
Yeah, I mean, I understand Michael's sentiment, but I don't think we have the resources to do that. I mean, that's just plain and simple. Watching this other task force operate, you know, it's hard enough just to factor into your days and meetings during the day to get this to actually get people to come together. You know, there's absolutely no way the boards could function or have the time to do any of that. I mean, just simply on top of our own work. I mean, it is extraordinary the amount of work that goes into each meeting and what needs to be gathered. And there's no way we could remotely entertain that. And, you know, I don't know what Janine thinks, but you know, having seen our own board office, you know, there's just, the sentiment is important, and maybe we need to convey some sentiment, but practically speaking, I'm not even sure how that could even remotely be accomplished.
I think something like permanent representation from all 3 community boards, we should definitely ask for, but maybe stop sort of chairing. I don't know. I kind of agree with Carter on that one.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Joanna?
I think it should also be included that for the whole area, like the coastal flood protection and the issues raised by the Army Corps are one massive component of it. And we're talking about it because that's the only hazard that they're addressing, but any plan or flood protection put in needs to also address stormwater. And I'm going to put the map in the chat in case you haven't seen some of the city's projected stormwater flooding. Like, it has to be some sort of integrated approach that also includes the people who were really impacted by Hurricane Ida's flooding and the people who have that lived experience with some inland flooding, so that any system put in place is responding to both needs.
That is a really good point, Joanna. And I think we had asked the Army Corps, and that's not really in their scope. And I think we put that in our comments. That's kind of a huge problem. Mm-hmm. So it needs to be much more holistic. Susan?
Part of an integrated approach is not just looking at the affected parties that we recognize now, but we have to have a placeholder to consider that there may be other entities that we want to bring into this, and we don't want to close that. You know, it's not like it's set in stone. These are the only, you know, these are the only parties involved. I mean, we have to recognize part of this process is also a brainstorming and considering the implications and who else might be appropriate to join in. You know, being holistic is also, it's also an evolutionary process. So I just want that to be, you know, part of the mindset in how we choose people to be, you know, representatives of groups to be involved, because we may that list may expand. That's all.
I think that's a good point. Maybe there should be some mechanism to, to grow the task force if as needed, because as if there's a comprehensive study, depending on what we learn, we may decide we want to bring in different people. Carter?
Yeah, based on what Susan's saying, one of the really critical things I think to lay this out, because I'm not quite sure practically how a lot of that works, but is to include public charrettes or whatever you want to call them during the process, so that the public has an opportunity to really be heard, and that's laid out as a key component of the task force getting input. And that can be run by everybody, the task force participants, but it's a way to really get all the different groups involved in ensuring that there's a public comment period for the task force to accept information from. Because the tendency is to close off a lot of these because they're unwieldy, but building baking it in, that there's a public comment opportunity or brainstorming is really important to explore all areas, and particularly some of the views that may not be as popular, but it gets them all in there in a way that they can then be evaluated. But if there's some document or whatever it may be, and and this has been done, I think that they did this with with Ground Zero, if I remember, with a lot of the design elements, and while not perfect, it's a way to get people in commenting, the community engaged. And then of course the elected officials are elected. The community board can have our own hearings on things, and that you might want to outline some of that as well as ways for input. But this can only be, one of the advantages here is it's done in advance, and that's one of the key elements here, is that this happens sooner than later, because the less time you have towards the project getting done, the faster it moves and just the decision is made. And that, as slow as it seems, it can also speed up just as quickly if there's money there. But the public component is an important part. That's a great point that Susan raised, and I was just remembering from I think Johanna probably knows more about a lot of these different things, and I haven't spoken to Johanna, so I may be just throwing that out there incorrectly, but there are a lot of ways to do that public input, but it's important to ensure it's baked in.
We can use language public listening sessions.
Listening and engagement, and the back and forth.
Right.
Really,
listening
really
and engagement
key.
sessions, right.
Joanna?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking out loud a little bit here, but I think especially this committee is so well positioned to think about the types of events that could also serve as fun, engaging learning sessions for community members. So all these creative ideas that this committee hears on a regular basis, if there were any partnerships that could be made with people who do come to the board to do a certain event, if there are collaborations that can happen, because we found a lot with our work that people don't want to go to another regular government meeting. You're going to have the same people in a very limited amount of input. But if you go to people, if you go to where people are likely going to traffic, areas that are have some element of a fun, engaging thing, like a food truck or something that draws people out and creates a benefit for their public engagement, then it becomes more of a win-win. And you get, as what Carter was talking about earlier, the continued educational component, so that as the this community learns more about what's underground, as a lot of studies are done, you can continue to have that relationship with the community that they'll appreciate, and they'll understand the guardrails that are set each step of the way, and have that sort of expectation set, but with a reason, that anyone can understand that, okay, we can have this, but it may not be exactly what we perfectly envision, but it's really good and it's informed by what we want.
I like the idea of getting creative, and we don't have to include that in our initial resolution, but I think it's a really good idea, or maybe we can mention it, but I don't know, even something like having some of the engagement sessions, like as a picnic in the park itself on a nice day, and literally being there in person and sort of talking about it as you sit in the park and take in the environment. I think there are definitely creative ways we could think to, I don't know if that's what you're thinking, Joanna, but creative ways to get people to engage, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Joanna, just by the way, I just want to say thank you so much for being part of our committee. I really appreciate all your input on this stuff. I think you're a great addition. So thanks for all of your.
Thank you. I'm learning a lot.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? Yeah. Okay. So in terms of the composition, maybe something like a permanent composition of the community boards, all three community boards, the park, and the relevant city officials, with the ability to sort of bring in experts as well as potential other third parties on sort of an ad hoc basis, something like that. Does that resonate with people? Does that make sense? Do we even want to get that detailed, or do we just want to say that we need permanent community board representation? I'm okay making sort of suggestion like that, knowing that it may, you know.
Maybe it's sort of safer, keeps us more flexible if we just talking about ourselves and our fellow boards, and let's take it from there instead of trying to identify anyone else at this point.
Should we just say we understand, it's likely we're going to have, it's likely it's going to look something like the park, elected officials, and community boards, but we strongly add, we believe it absolutely has to have, permanent and meaningful composition from community boards, and then the ability to sort of bring on ad hoc parties as needed as well. Something like that. I can play with the wording, but.
And to allow for participatory listening sessions.
Oh, well, yeah, that'll be part of it as well. I'm just thinking about the composition part. And then there's a lot of, there's the public aspect as well. Opportunities to educate the public. Carter, yeah.
Yeah, one of the key things is to have enough members from the community boards, because that's what the pushback will be on. But just to give an example, each of the community boards has a representative to the advisory council. Each of the community boards has their own waterfront issues. You have the board chair, you'll have people who are knowledgeable, and including enough membership to capture that is important. And the tendency is to limit the participation. But that's very important as time passes, that there's enough people who aren't changing at once to make sure there's continuity of the board's positions. And that's something that we haven't faced yet, but it will certainly be going forward. So it's something to lay out now, because can tell you that even 4 people seems like a lot, but realistically, it might even be better to have 5 or 6, who are just participating on an ongoing basis because of all the different crossover issues. So I know it's a lot, but that's sort of the reality of the way we run and people's own time of participating, because this will be a big commitment for whomever might be participating in this process.
Right. Joanna?
I think also with that, there has to be a lot of transparency up front where they are clearly communicating what this group is being tasked to do, and what their, as Carter mentioned, what their responsibilities will be. And it should be really clear up front that this process is going on, so that people in the community aren't finding out, weeks or months into it. And that the onus of that shouldn't be set completely on the community boards. Like the city and the state really need to step up into making sure it's clear that this process is happening.
Okay. Anyone else want to comment? I think we're all sort of at a consensus here of what we're calling for. Anyone else want to make a comment? I think let me try to summarize. It's where we are echoing the call for the creation of a task force. We're talking about the composition and that we need an kind of an over-representation or a significant representation from community boards. We're talking about the ability for it to be flexible and dynamic and bring on people on an ad hoc basis. We're talking about the importance of public engagement and what that looks like, and both clarity to the public up front, as well as continued opportunities, as well as continued and creative opportunities for engagement with the public throughout the life of the task force. There might be one or two other things, but I think that's really the gist of it.
Will, could you start off by saying something like, we support the recommendation of the advisory council for a task force? I think it would help to start that way.
Yeah, I think that's the first point, is we support it in general, and then we get into the details of what we are recommending.
And that we mentioned the advisory council because that's who came up with the idea.
Our recommendations are an outline. I don't know that they have to be at this point more detailed than that. We're moving it forward. We can refine aspects of that profile as we move forward. But the important thing is to respond to it, in a timely way.
Right, and it's putting out our initial thoughts as to what the task force needs to look like. Yeah,
it's a dynamic process for us too. So. Yeah.
Okay. If no other comments, let's take a vote. All in favor of this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Abstain, recuse. Okay, unanimous. So I will work on a draft and do my best to capture all of this. Last thing, I did send out a lot of FYI renewals. Does anyone want to bring up any of those? But this is back for street activities. I know we're jumping around, but
the only thing that I would made a note of to myself is that for the Triangle Shirtwaist Commemoration, that there's been plans of having a very nice kind of memorial attached to the building, and I was hoping that we would get some information about that, but that wouldn't stop us from approving this particular annual event.
This is a permanent memorial that they're thinking of putting in, like a structure?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it does not mention that in the application. That's an interesting topic we can follow up on.
Thank you.
Okay, if no other comments, all in favor of the FYI renewals, let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstain? Recuse? Okay. Any other new business? Okay. Well, thanks everyone. This was a great meeting tonight. Appreciate everyone joining. Appreciate you, Carter and Donna as well. Not part of the committee, but thanks for all the really useful input, and thanks for taking the time tonight. And thanks, of course, to the members of the public that joined as well. Okay. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.